The first time Amara saw Kong Min-jun kill a man's entire future, she was barefoot in his kitchen, wearing his shirt, drinking coffee from a mug that said "World's Okayest Husband." His voice drifted from the study, calm as a weather forecast. Freeze his accounts, all of them, and tell his wife about the mistress. Use the photos from Thursday. He hung up, padded into the kitchen, kissed her forehead, and asked if she wanted pancakes or waffles. She chose waffles. She always chose waffles. And she tried not to think about the man whose life had just ended somewhere between her first and second sip of coffee. This was her life now. Penthouse in Gangnam, 42nd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows that turned Seoul into a glittering circuit board every night. A walk-in closet the size of her old apartment in Atlanta. A husband whose name made powerful men go pale. And still, Amara reached past the Valentino, past the Dior, past the row of silk blouses that cost more than her first car, and pulled out a plain black dress she'd bought at a market in Itaewon 2 years ago. 15,000 won. About $11. Old habits from harder times. You're doing it again. Minjun leaned against the doorframe, already dressed in a charcoal three-piece suit. His dark hair pushed back, his jaw sharp enough to cut the morning light slanting through the windows. He looked like a man who owned things. Buildings, companies, people. He looked like exactly what he was. Doing what? Shopping in your closet, like you're on a budget. She smiled, clipping on pearl earrings, a gift from their first anniversary that she wore almost every day. I like simple things. I like spoiling you. He crossed to her, his hands finding her waist with the ease of someone who'd memorized her body like a map. His lips brushed her neck. Warm, deliberate. Humor me. You humor me by loving me exactly as I am. His expression softened in that way it only did for her. The hard edges dissolving, the underground king retreating behind the man. He held her gaze for a beat too long, and she saw it again. That flicker of disbelief, like he still couldn't quite accept that she was real, that she was here, that she'd stayed. Then, more carefully, "You're going to Gangnam Mall today?" "Just some Christmas shopping. I won't be long." Something tightened behind his eyes. "Take Jin-woo and Taeyang." "Baby, I don't need bodyguards to go Christmas shopping." Amara, the softness vanished. His jaw locked, his hands still gentle on her waist, but his voice carved from something cold and immovable. "You know what I am. You know what I do. You know the enemies that creates. You don't leave this house without security. Non-negotiable." There it was. The line where husband ended and king began. She felt it every time. That invisible wall she could press against but never break through. She cupped his face. "Okay, I'll take them." The tension left his shoulders. He kissed her. Deep, slow, thorough enough to make her forget what they'd been arguing about. Then checked his watch. Solid platinum. Simple. Obscenely expensive. "I have a meeting. Home by 7. We have dinner reservations at 8. "Where?" That dangerous smile. The one that had made her say yes to a second date, a third, a ring, a life she never imagined. "Surprise! Wear the red dress." "Which red dress?" "The one I can't stop thinking about removing." Heat climbed her neck. "You're insatiable. Only for you." One more kiss, and then he was gone, his cologne lingering in the air, like a promise and a warning. Amara stood alone in their closet. In the silence, she opened the bottom drawer of her vanity, the one Min-jun never touched because she'd asked him not to, and he respected her boundaries even when he respected nothing else. Inside, a worn leather journal. She didn't open it, didn't need to. She knew the last page by heart. $17. That's what I'm worth. $17 and a car that smells like failure. She closed the drawer, pressed her palm flat against it, as if holding something down. 3 years. A whole new life. A whole new country. A whole new name. And still that girl lived inside her. The one who'd woken up in a pool of blood on the floor of a charity ward, alone, with nothing left. Amara straightened, smoothed her $11 dress, checked her reflection, a woman who looked like she had everything, and went Christmas shopping. She saw him before he saw her. Marcus Wellington, standing in the Louis Vuitton section like he belonged there, leaning against a display case, laughing with a woman whose entire outfit screamed new money trying to look like old money. Same cocky smile. Same expensive taste funded by other people's wallets. Same entitled swagger that she'd once mistaken for confidence. 3 years. 3 years of rebuilding. Of teaching herself to eat without guilt, sleep without nightmares, trust without flinching. 3 years of becoming someone new in a country where no one knew her name or her shame. And he was just standing there, laughing. Her hands trembled. The shopping bags nearly slipped from her grip. Jinwoo and Taeyang flanked her at a respectful distance, unaware that the woman they were protecting had just stopped breathing. Walk away. Turn around. Leave. But her feet were welded to the marble floor. Marcus looked up. Their eyes met. 1 second of nothing. She was just another face in a crowd of wealthy shoppers. And then recognition hit him like a slap. Shock first, then something uglier. Something that curdled behind his eyes and settled into the familiar sneer she used to cry herself to sleep over. He whispered something to the woman, started walking toward her. Every nerve in Amara's body screamed, "Run." She didn't. Well, that voice, that tone, condescending as a pat on the head. "Amara. Didn't expect to see you here. Thought you'd be at the thrift stores, where you belong." She found her voice somewhere beneath the rubble of 3 years of therapy. "Marcus, I have nothing to say to you." "What's wrong? Still bitter?" His eyes traveled over her, mocking, assessing, dismissing. "Though I see you cleaned up. Found some desperate man to pay your bills? That's always been your talent, hasn't it? Playing victim until some fool takes pity." Jinwoo moved closer. Taeyang's hand drifted toward his phone. "You left me with nothing," Amara said quietly, and she hated how her voice shook. "You stole everything I had." Marcus laughed, loud enough to turn heads. "Stole? Baby, I liberated myself from a parasite. Best decision I ever made. I was pregnant with your child. And I told you from the beginning I didn't want kids. You probably got pregnant on purpose, trying to trap me." His eyes were flat, dead. Not even the decency of cruelty, just indifference. "Thank God I got out when I did." The woman on his arm appeared, linking herself to him possessively. "Is this her? The ex who stalked you?" "I never..." "Don't make a scene." Marcus cut her off, already turning to leave, dismissing her again. The way he dismissed her 3 years ago, with a note on the kitchen counter and an emptied bank account. Something cracked inside her chest. Not broke, cracked. The way ice cracks before it gives way completely. "You destroyed me," she said, and her voice didn't shake this time. "I lost our baby because I was starving, homeless, sleeping in my car." "Shut up." He spun back, face twisted. "Don't you dare guilt me with that. I survived you, Marcus." The words came from somewhere deep and ancient and unbreakable. "That's what you can't stand. Not that I moved on, but that I didn't need you to." His face went red. He shoved past Jinwoo, who shifted like a wall, and his hand connected with Amara's shoulder. Hard. She stumbled backward into a display stand, ornament shattering, her elbow splitting open against the metal edge. She hit the ground. Her dress tore. Blood bloomed on her arm. The mall went silent. Marcus stood over her, chest heaving, fist still clenched. "Stay down where you belong, you worthless." He didn't finish. Jinwoo had him on the ground in 2 seconds flat, arm twisted behind his back. Taeyang was already pulling Amara to her feet with one hand, his phone pressed to his ear with the other. His face had gone the color of ash. Not fear for himself, fear for what was coming, because Minjun was going to find out. And when Kang Minjun found out, the world had a way of catching fire. Taeyang spoke rapid Korean into the phone, too fast for Amara's intermediate skills to follow, then handed it to her. His hand was shaking. "Hello?" Her voice came out small. Silence on the other end. 1 second. 2. 3. The kind of silence that has weight, that has teeth. "Are you hurt?" Minjun's voice was so calm, it circled back to terrifying. Not a raised syllable, not a single crack, just ice, stretching in every direction. "I'm okay. Just a scratch." "Don't lie to me, Amara. My elbow is bleeding. I fell, but I'm..." "Who touched you?" She closed her eyes. "Who touched you?" "My ex-fiancé, Marcus, but security has him. I'm 10 minutes away." "Minjun, please don't. He put his hands on you." Still calm. Still ice. "He hurt you." There is no version of this where he walks away without consequences. The line went dead. Amara looked at Jean Wu, pinning Marcus to the polished marble floor. At Taiyang, standing guard beside her, with the expression of a man watching a fuse burn. At Marcus's girlfriend, screaming at security guards. At the crowd of shoppers with their phones out, recording, whispering, and she felt it settle in her stomach. Cold, certain, inevitable. Marcus had no idea what he'd done. Minjeon arrived in 8 minutes. It took him 6 of those to cross Gangnam in a black motorcade that ran 3 red lights. He spent the other 2 sitting in the parking garage, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white, breathing through the kind of rage that made men do things they couldn't take back. He thought about his father. He thought about the sound of his mother crying through a locked door. He thought about Amara's voice on the phone. Small, shaking, trying to protect him from himself by saying she was fine. And he wanted to tear this building apart with his bare hands. But he didn't. He breathed. He unclenched his fists. He buttoned his jacket, straightened his cuffs, and became the version of himself that the world feared most. Not the angry one, but the calm one. The one who smiled before he destroyed you. 6 of his men followed him inside. All armed, all wearing the same expressionless mask. Mall security parted like water. He found Amara in the security office. An EMT was cleaning the scrape on her elbow. Her dress was torn at the shoulder. Mascara tracked down her cheeks in dark rivers. He crossed the room in 3 strides. His hands cupped her face. So gently, so impossibly gently, for hands that had broken bones an hour ago in a boardroom negotiation, and tilted her face up to his. Let me see. It's just a scratch, Minjeon. His eyes traveled over the torn dress, the bandage, the tear tracks. When he looked at her again, she saw something that made her breath catch. Not anger, worse, the absolute, terrifying absence of mercy. Who is he? Barely a whisper. Point him out. Baby, let's just go home. It's not worth it. His hand trembled against her cheek. The tremor shocked her. Kang Min-jun's hands didn't tremble. Kang Min-jun's hands signed death warrants without a twitch. But here, now, touching her face, they shook. You're bleeding. Someone put their hands on my wife. My woman, He stopped, swallowed. Switched to Korean, speaking to Taiyang in sentences sharp enough to cut. Taeyang bowed and left. Then Minjeon kissed her forehead. Soft, almost reverent. And when he pulled back, the tenderness was gone, replaced by something carved from stone. Stay here. This won't take long. He walked into the next room. Through the window, Amara watched. She watched her husband lift Marcus Wellington off the ground by his throat, one-handed, and pin him to the wall hard enough to crack the plaster. She watched Marcus's feet dangle, his face turning purple as he clawed at Minjeon's grip. She watched Minjeon speak, low, controlled, every word a surgical cut. She couldn't hear the words, but she could read his lips enough to catch fragments. My wife. You touched her. You left her to die. And she watched Minjeon's face while he did it. That was the part that stopped her cold. Because his expression wasn't rage, wasn't fury, wasn't the hot, explosive anger she'd seen in Marcus when he'd shoved her. It was nothing. Empty. Mechanical. The face of a man performing a task he'd performed 100 times before. He could have been checking a spreadsheet, signing a contract, ordering lunch. He dropped Marcus, kicked him in the ribs. One precise, devastating strike. The crack of bone echoed through the security office walls. Marcus's girlfriend screamed. Security guards looked away. Nobody stopped it. Nobody could. Minjeon crouched beside Marcus's writhing form and spoke again. Longer this time. Amara saw Marcus's face go white, then gray, then crumble entirely. Saw him nod, frantically, desperately. The way a man agrees to anything when he understands he is completely and utterly powerless. Minjeon stood, buttoned his jacket, straightened his cuffs, and walked back to her. The monster vanished between one step and the next. By the time he reached her, he was just her husband again. Warm eyes, gentle hands, that devastating softness he saved only for her. Ready to go home? She nodded. She couldn't speak. He gathered her up, carefully, like she was made of glass, and carried her through the mall, past the shattered display, past the blood stain on the marble, past the silent crowd still filming on their phones. But as she pressed her face into his neck and breathed in his cologne, sandalwood and cedar and something darker underneath. She couldn't stop the thought that coiled through her mind like smoke. He hurt Marcus the way Marcus used to hurt me. Different reasons, same violence, same hands holding me now like I'm precious. She loved him. God help her. She loved him completely. But she'd seen his face through that window. The emptiness, the practiced ease of cruelty. And for the first time since she'd married Kong Min-jun, Amara wondered if love alone was enough to keep the darkness from swallowing them both. The shower was almost too hot. Steam curled around them, blurring the edges of the glass walls, the marble tile, the world outside. Min-jun washed her hair. He didn't speak, didn't ask questions, just worked shampoo through her curls with slow, circular motions, his thumbs pressing into the tension at the base of her skull, until she exhaled a breath she'd been holding since the mall floor. He rinsed the suds away, cleaned the scrape on her elbow with careful fingers, wincing when she winced, as if her pain transferred directly into his body through some invisible wire. He kissed her shoulders, her neck, the curve where her jaw met her ear. No urgency, no hunger, just a man trying to put something back together with his mouth, because his hands had spent the afternoon tearing something apart. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He turned her to face him. Water ran between them in thin rivers. For what? For never telling you the full story. About Marcus. About everything. You told me enough. I told you the version that didn't scare me to say out loud. His eyes searched hers. He didn't push. That was the thing about Min-jun. He could be relentless with the rest of the world. But with her, he waited. Always waited. As if she were a language he was still learning, and he didn't want to misread a single word. "When you're ready," he said. "I'll be here." She fell asleep in his arms that night, her back pressed against his chest, his hand resting over her heartbeat like he was monitoring it. Safe, warm, loved. She dreamed of a baby, crying in a room she couldn't find. Min-jun waited until her breathing slowed into the deep, even rhythm of real sleep. Then he carefully, so carefully, untangled himself from her body, tucked the duvet around her shoulders, and walked to the bathroom. He closed the door, locked it. His hands were shaking. He looked at them under the vanity light. The right one was bruised across the knuckles, a dark bloom spreading from index finger to wrist. Marcus's jaw. Marcus's ribs. The satisfying give of cartilage. The sound of something cracking that shouldn't crack. He'd enjoyed it. That was the part that made him grip the edge of the sink until his arms ached. Not the violence itself. Violence was a tool, and he'd been trained to use tools without sentiment. But the enjoyment. The hot, electric rush that had flooded through him when Marcus hit the floor. The way his pulse had steadied, not quickened, when he'd heard the man's ribs break. The calm. The focus. The peace of it. His father had been peaceful too, in those moments. Min-jun stared at his reflection, and saw Kang Hyun-woo staring back. Same jaw, same eyes, same hands. The memory came without permission. 14 years old. A man kneeling in the basement of their Hanam-dong estate, bleeding from the mouth. His father handing him a metal pipe. Hit him. "Aboji, I can't." "Kongmen, don't cry." The slap came fast, sharp. A teacher's correction. Kongmen make others cry. "Now hit him, or I'll teach you what real pain feels like." He'd hit the man. And he'd cried afterward, alone, in his room, with the door locked and the shower running, so no one could hear. He was 31 now. He hadn't cried since. But standing in his bathroom, staring at his bruised knuckles, he felt something press against the back of his eyes. Hot, insistent, terrifying. Amara had looked at him through that security office window. He'd seen it. The exact moment something shifted in her expression. Not fear exactly. Worse. Recognition. As if she'd seen that kind of violence before and had spent 3 years trying to forget what it looked like. He'd made her remember. He splashed cold water on his face, dried it with a towel that probably cost $200. Stood there in the silence of a penthouse that felt, for the first time, like the gilded prison Amara had never called it, but probably thought about. When he returned to bed, she murmured in her sleep and reached for him. Her fingers found his wrist, circled it loosely, pulled his arm around her. "Stay," she breathed. Not awake, not conscious of what she was saying, just a body that had learned to feel safe next to his. He pressed his lips to her hair and held her. Staying was easy. Being worthy of staying. That was the part that kept him awake until dawn bled through the curtains. The video hit 17 million views by morning. Someone, a shopper, a bystander, someone with steady hands and no sense of privacy, had recorded the entire confrontation. Marcus shoving Jean Woo, Amara hitting the floor, Minjeon arriving like a hurricane in a tailored suit. The footage cut before the worst of it, but the internet filled in the gaps with speculation that was, Amara knew, nowhere near as bad as the truth. The hashtag trended #1 in Seoul. Hashtag Gangnam Mall incident. By noon, it had crossed into international Twitter. By evening, someone had identified Minjeon. Photos of them together, their marriage certificate, articles about the Kong family empire, carefully worded to dance around the word criminal, while making the implication unmistakable. Her phone became a bomb. 53 missed calls, hundreds of texts. Kesha, from Atlanta. Girl, what? You married a whole mafia boss, and your ex got handled on camera? And then the email from the school. Kong, we'd like to schedule a meeting regarding recent media attention and parent concerns. She sat on the edge of the bed, reading it 3 times. The words blurred. Parent concerns. That meant someone had Googled her husband and decided their children's English teacher was a liability. Teaching was hers. The one thing in her life that had nothing to do with Minjeon's money, Minjeon's power, Minjeon's name. She'd earned it. The degree, the certification, the TEFL training she'd paid for with overtime shifts at a restaurant in Koreatown while sleeping in a shelter. It was proof that she existed as a person, not an accessory. And now it was slipping. Minjeon read the email over her shoulder. His response was immediate. You're not going back to that school. It's not safe anymore. Your face is everywhere. I'll increase security here and... No. He stopped. Not used to the word. Not from her. Amara, I lost everything once because I depended on a man. She stood, and her voice didn't shake. Not even a little. And she was proud of that. My money. My home, my baby, everything. Because I built my entire life around someone else. And when he left, there was nothing underneath. She looked at him. I won't do that again. Not even for you. Not even for someone I love. This is about your safety. This is about my identity. That job is mine. I fought for it. And I'll fight to keep it on my own terms. I can make one phone call. That's exactly the problem, Minjeon. You can always make one phone call. And every time you do, I become smaller. Less mine, more yours. He flinched, actually flinched, as if she'd struck him. The silence stretched between them. Not comfortable, not charged, just heavy. The weight of 2 people who loved each other, standing on opposite sides of something that couldn't be solved with money or power or violence. He left without another word. The door closed softly. Somehow worse than a slam. Amara sat on the kitchen floor, back against the island, and cried. Not because she was scared. Because she loved him so much, it was rearranging her bones. And she knew with the certainty of a woman who'd already survived one devastating loss, that love was not enough if it came with a cage. Even a golden one. Even one built with the best intentions. He didn't come home that night. And for the first time since she'd married Kong Min-joon, Amara slept alone in their enormous bed, and wondered if loving a king meant she would always be a subject. He came back at 3 a.m. She heard the front door, the soft click of his shoes on the hardwood, the clink of a glass, whiskey probably, the Yamazaki 18 he kept on the shelf by the window. Then, silence. She found him on the balcony, sitting on the concrete floor with his back against the railing, his legs stretched out, the glass balanced on his knee. The city shimmered 42 stories below, Seoul dressed in Christmas lights, gold and white and endless. He looked up when she stepped outside. His eyes were red. She didn't say anything, just sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. The silence lasted a long time, long enough for the cold to seep through her robe, for her breath to cloud, for the ice in his glass to melt. Then, quietly, so quietly she almost missed it, he said, "My father used to hit my mother." Amara went still. "Not often. Not," he laughed, hollow. "Not like you think. He wasn't a drunk who beat his wife every Saturday. He was a powerful man who loved her, truly loved her, and still couldn't stop the violence from leaking into everything he touched. It would happen once, maybe twice a year, always after something went wrong in the business. Always followed by gifts, jewelry, trips, apologies. She always forgave him. He stared at the skyline. I was 8 the first time I saw it. Hid under my bed and learned 2 things. That love isn't enough to make a man safe, and that power corrupts even the purest intentions. Amara's throat ached. Minjun, I'm terrified, Amara. His voice cracked on her name. The first crack she'd ever heard in Kong Minjun's voice. I'm terrified I'm becoming him. I looked at myself in the mirror last night and saw his face, his hands. I broke that man's ribs, and I felt... He stopped, swallowed. I felt calm. I felt right. And that scares me more than any enemy I've ever had. She reached over and took his hand, the bruised one. She held it between both of hers and pressed it to her chest, over her heartbeat. Tell me about yours, he whispered then, looking at her. Tell me about the things you carry. I want to know all of it. Everything you've been holding alone. So she told him. About Marcus. About the note on the counter. About coming home to an empty apartment and an empty bank account, and standing in a painted nursery with $17 to her name. About living in her car. About trying to eat enough to keep the baby alive and failing. About waking in a pool of blood on a shelter floor and driving herself to the emergency room because there was no one to call. About hope. I named her. Amara's voice was barely a sound. I know they said it was too early to know, but I knew. She was a girl, and I named her Hope, because that's what she was. The last thing I had left. Her breath hitched. I've never told anyone her name. Minjun's jaw trembled. He turned his hand in hers, laced their fingers together. Tell me about Hope, he whispered. And the way he said the name, like it was holy, like it mattered, like their daughter had been real and not just a ghost Amara had carried alone for 3 years, broke something open inside her that she'd welded shut the night she lost everything. Their daughter. He said, their daughter, not your baby. Not what happened. Their daughter. As if hope belonged to both of them. As if he'd claimed her across time, across all the years he hadn't been there, across the impossibility of loving a child he'd never known existed until this moment. She told him everything. The color she'd painted the nursery, soft yellow, like morning. The onesie she'd bought at a thrift store with daisies on it. The way she'd talk to her stomach at night, telling Hope about the world she'd be born into, making promises she couldn't keep. Minjun listened. He didn't try to fix it. Didn't offer solutions or platitudes or the kind of hollow comfort that people give when they don't know what else to say. He just held her hand and listened and let her voice crack and shake and go silent and come back again. And when she was done, when there was nothing left to say, he did something that undid her completely. He leaned his head against her shoulder. Kong Minjun, underground king of Seoul, the man who made powerful men tremble with a phone call, the man whose hands had broken bones that afternoon without a tremor. He rested his head on her shoulder like a child, like the 8-year-old boy who'd hidden under his bed and never been held afterward. She wrapped her arms around him, pressed her lips to his hair, and they sat there on that balcony, 42 stories above a city that belonged to him, and cried together. They didn't fix each other that night. That's not how healing works. But they did something harder and more important. They stopped pretending they didn't need fixing. Things changed after that. Not all at once. Not dramatically. The way seasons change. Slowly, then all at once. Until you look up and realize the entire landscape is different. Amara went to the school meeting, alone. No bodyguards in the parking lot. No phone calls from Minjun to the headmaster. She sat across from 3 administrators and 2 concerned parents and defended herself with her teaching record, her evaluations, her students' test scores, and the quiet, unshakable dignity of a woman who had survived far worse than a PTA complaint. She kept her job. She hired her own lawyer, not one of Minjun's. A young woman named Yoon Hye-jin from a mid-sized firm in Mapo-gu, who specialized in nonprofit law. Together, they began building the framework for what Amara had been dreaming about since the night on the balcony. The Second Chances Foundation. Housing, job training, therapy, childcare. Everything she'd wished for and never had. This was hers. Built with her vision, her pain, her name. Minjun watched. He didn't interfere. It was, she knew, the hardest thing he'd ever done. Harder than any business negotiation, any territorial dispute, any act of violence. Standing back, letting her lead. But he was learning. When Park Jae-sung, a rival who'd sent veiled threats after the video went viral, escalated his provocations, Minjun didn't reach for violence. He reached for strategy, bought out Park's debt, turned an enemy into a debtor with a single transaction and a smile that was somehow more terrifying than a fist. When Amara asked, "Did you hurt anyone?" he looked at her with something new in his eyes. Something that might have been pride, or maybe just relief. "No. You asked me to be better. I'm trying." "Trying is enough," she said. "For now." He almost smiled. "For now." Marcus's public apology came on a Tuesday. Amara watched it on her phone during her lunch break at school, sitting in the faculty room with a cup of instant coffee and a kimbap from the convenience store downstairs. Marcus looked hollowed out, broken in the specific way that men break when the world finally holds them accountable. He read from a script. She recognized Minjun's precision in every sentence, and apologized to her, to the other women, to the public. She felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not pity, not anger, just nothing. She deleted the notification, finished her kimbap, and went back to teaching her third graders the difference between past tense and present perfect. The past was past. She was living in the present. And for the first time, the present didn't feel like a place she was hiding in. A week later, Marcus sent an email. She read it standing in the kitchen while Minjun made bulgogi. He'd been taking cooking classes, badly, endearingly, burning the garlic every time, but refusing to give up. The email was short. "I saw the news about your foundation. I'm proud of you. You deserved better than me, and I'm glad you found it." She read it once, felt the last locked door inside her chest swing open, letting in light she didn't know she'd been blocking. Then she deleted it. "Who was that?" Minjun asked, scraping burnt garlic into the trash with the resigned expression of a man who controlled an empire but could not control a stovetop. "Nobody," she said, and meant it. That night, he gave her the necklace. A delicate gold chain with a pendant shaped like a phoenix rising from flames. Wings spread, head lifted, every feather etched with impossible detail. "You rose from the ashes," he said softly, fastening it around her neck. His fingers lingered on her skin. "You're my phoenix. Beautiful, powerful, reborn." She touched the pendant, warm from his hands. "I need to say something," she said, turning to face him, "and I need you to hear it." He waited, the way he always waited for her now. "I don't need you to save me, Minjun. I saved myself a long time ago." She straightened his tie. He was always wearing ties, even at home, as if formality were armor. Her fingers lingered on his chest. "What I need is a partner, someone who stands beside me. Not in front of me. Can you do that?" He covered her hand with his. The bruises had faded, but she could still see the ghost of them. Yellow-green shadows across his knuckles. "I can learn," he said. "That's all I'm asking." He pulled her close. Not possessively, not protectively, just close. Two people choosing to stand in the same space. "I'm still going to worry," he murmured against her hair. "I know. And I'm still going to want to destroy anyone who hurts you." "I know that too. But I'll try to ask first. Before I..." He gestured vaguely. "You know." She laughed. A real laugh, warm and full. The kind that she'd thought Marcus had stolen from her permanently, but that had apparently just been in hiding, waiting for the right person to coax it out. That's a start. They stood on the balcony later. Their balcony. Their 3 a.m. confessional. Their place. And watched Seoul glitter beneath a December sky. The Second Chances Foundation would open in the spring. 20 women. Housing, training, therapy, hope. Hope. She touched the phoenix at her throat and thought about a yellow nursery, a daisy onesie, a name whispered to a stomach that would never grow round enough. "What are you thinking about?" Minjun asked. "Hope," she said. "Both meanings. All meanings." He pulled her closer. She let him. They weren't fixed. They weren't perfect. His world was still dark, still dangerous, still full of men who solved problems with violence and called it business. She still woke some nights, reaching for a baby that wasn't there. He still sometimes looked in the mirror and saw his father's eyes. But they were trying, together, with eyes open and hands intertwined, and the kind of love that didn't pretend the cracks didn't exist. It just filled them with gold and called them beautiful. Below them, Seoul hummed, alive, restless, glittering. A city of 10 million stories, and theirs was just one. Imperfect, scarred, still being written, but it was theirs. And that was enough. He said, I can learn, and she believed him. But here's the thing about learning. It means you haven't figured it out yet. It means there will be mistakes. And in Minjun's world, mistakes don't end in arguments. They end in blood. She chose to stay. She chose him. Eyes open, scars visible, heart on the table. But was that the right choice? Because his world doesn't just let people walk away. Park Jae-sung is still out there, circling. The investigation hasn't stopped, and the Second Chances Foundation is about to open doors that some very powerful people want to keep shut. They filled their cracks with gold and called them beautiful, but gold catches the light. And in the shadows of Seoul's underground, light is the most dangerous thing you can carry. I guess we'll find out in part 2. If you want to see what happens when the King of Seoul tries to be a better man in a world that punishes mercy, subscribe and turn on notifications. The story is far from over.